Alright guys, here's our first flipped classroom lesson. We're going to learn how to solve one-step equations. Before we actually go into solving one-step equations, we're going to learn what an inverse operation is. Inverse is just another word or a mathematical term for the opposite. Just like the opposite of tall is short and the opposite of hot is cold, the opposite of adding is subtracting. Also, the opposite of subtracting is adding, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing, and the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So you can copy down this chart in your notebook. Just make sure you press pause, and then you play it again once you're done copying the chart into your notebook. It is not mandatory to copy the chart in your notebook, but if you want to, you can. Just make sure you have this chart somewhat memorized, or you know the inverses of each operation. Now, we're going to actually get into the questions that you should ask yourself for every one-step equation. When you're given an equation, you want to first ask yourself, what kind of equation is it? Does it involve adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Once we know that, you're going to go into question number 2. What is the inverse operation, or what is the opposite operation? Then question number 3 we're going to ask ourselves is, what number is with the variable? You guys are asked this a couple times before when we were solving proportions. Whatever number is with the variable, that's the most important number, because that's the one that we're going to use to isolate the variable, which gets us into question 4. How do we actually isolate it? Every time I ask you guys, how do I isolate the variable, I want this sentence to be said. I blank blank on both sides. And those two blanks are going to come from, the first blank is going to come from question number 2. What is the inverse operation? That's either going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. And then our second blank is going to be whatever you answer to number 3. What is the number that is with the variable? So make sure you get those in the notes. Also, I want you guys to make sure that you get this very important starred quote or starred sentence in your notes. This is the sentence that I will make sure that you guys viewed this video. It's also one of the main things you want to learn when you're solving one-step equations or any equations. It's whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must also do to the other side. So please write that down. And when I ask you for a password to come into the classroom, or when I ask to walk around and see if you wrote it down, I want to see this written down. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. And we're also going to get into that when we actually do some examples. Okay, so we're going to go through one example together. We're going to start with x minus 2 equals 5. First, we're going to use question number 1. What kind of equation is it? Well, we're using subtraction. Since we know that we're using subtraction in the problem, we know that the inverse operation, or for question number 2, we're using addition. And we know that the number with the variable, or on the same side as the variable, is 2. So how do we isolate the variable? We're going to take the answer from number 2 and the answer from number 3 and put it in that sentence. So, how do I isolate the variable? Well, I add 2 to both sides. Remember that starred comment? Make sure you want to do whatever you do to both sides of the equation. So now we're actually going to do this together. So make sure you write down x minus 2 equals 5 in your notes. And now we're going to add 5 to both sides, just like we said. So we're going to add 2 to this side, and add 2 to this side. Now, this problem here is negative 2 plus 5. Remember, we use the minus sign. We're going to squeeze that with the 2, so that makes it negative. So we know that negative 2 plus 2 is just 0. So that cancels out. And the only thing we're left with on the left side is x. Now, we have to do this other operation, or 5 plus 2. We know that 5 plus 2 is 7. So our answer is x equal to 7. Now I know everyone out there is saying, Mr. Sampson, I can take 7 minus 2 equals 5. I can just do that in my head. we're trying to learn how to do a process. So to do this process, you have to do every step that I just said. So that step, and there's one more step that we're going to do. We're going to do the check step, which is we're going to copy down our original problem, which is x minus 2 equals 5, but instead of putting the x, we're just going to put what we solved for. So our next line is going to read 7 minus 2 equals 5. Now if that is correct, we got our answer right. And since 7 minus 2 does equal 5, we know that that's right, and we also know that our answer x equals 7 is also correct. So that means on every quiz, every homework, every test that I give you, we always want that third step because you're going to know that your answer is correct for all these one-step equations. If you didn't understand it the first time, we're going to do this. We're going to have 3 other examples to do. So this one we're doing with addition. So it's x plus 6 equals 10. So since we're using addition in the equation, our inverse operation, or our opposite operation, is just to subtract. And we're going to subtract the number with the variable. So we subtract 6 from the left side. Whatever we do to the left side of the equation, we must do to the right side of the equation. 6 minus 6 cancels out. We are left with x on the left side. And 10 minus 6 equals 4. We box up our answer. And here comes the check step. Instead of putting in x, we're going to put a 4 plus 6 equals 10. Once we have that, we're going to check it. Does 4 plus 6 equal to 10? It does, and since it does, we know that our answer, x equals 4, is correct. Now we're going to move to our next problem. 2x equals 30. We know that this is multiplication because the numbers are squished next to each other with no symbol in between them. So, you also saw this when we solved proportions. This is the step before you find the final answer. So, you were doing it and you never even knew it. So, we're going to use the number with the variable, which is 2, and since it's a multiplication problem, we are going to divide by 2, and we have to do it to both sides. So 2 divided by 2 equals 1. We cross that out, and we're left with x. On the right side, 30 divided by 2 is just 15. We are going to box our answer. One last step, we are going to check it. Copy down the 2, put the multiplication sign, 15 equals 30. If 2 times 15 does equal 30, we can put a check mark on that, and we can put a check mark on our 15 because we know that is correct. Now, we've done a subtraction problem, an addition problem, a multiplication problem. Our last one is division. And division is one of the harder problems to wrap your head around, so this one's going to take a little bit longer. But we do know it's division. You're still going to use the same basic principles. We know that it's division. We know that the number with the variable is 3. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Now, off to the side, I'm also going to do this first part here, the left side. Okay? Another way of writing 3 is just 3 over 1. And we're going to multiply this by x over 3, because that's what we had to do in the left side of the problem. When you're multiplying fractions, you just multiply straight across. So we're going to get 3x over 3. And now it just looks like the problem we just had, except with 3's. These cancel out, and you're left with x. So we can put on our problem, cross those out, we put an x, and now that equals whatever 7 times 3 is. And 7 times 3 equals 21. We box our answer. And our last step is to check it. When we check it, all we have to do is we're going to go to our original problem with no writing on it. We're going to copy down the problem, except instead of putting x, we're going to put 21. We have 21 over 3 equals 7. And since we know that 21 divided by 3 does equal 7, we know that that's right. And we know that our answer x equals 21 is correct. So, now we did how to solve one-step equations for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division problems. What you guys are going to have to do for tomorrow is come in with any questions. Also come in with these problems done in your notebook, as well as this password, which is whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. Have that written down and have it ready for tomorrow. Also, please write down any questions that you have about the lesson. I'll answer any that you have tomorrow, and then we'll give you your work.